Happy holidays, everybody. No, this isn't Star Trek Season 5. That'll come next month, but we have a lot of fun content, Star Trek and otherwise, coming for you for the Christmas season. And this first video is actually Alex's idea. I was very excited and surprised he wanted to talk about this movie because it's a favorite of mine for the holidays. I didn't even know you had watched it. We're talking about White Christmas, the holiday classic. And I have it on VHS, Blu-ray as well. I watch it every year. And
No. Sorry, Josh. I was talking about Black Mirror, White Christmas, the TV episode from the show.
Oh. Well, I mean, are you sure you don't want to talk about this White Christmas?
I mean, we can. What's it about?
Oh, it's basically, so it's a musical.
No.
And it... We've gotten many requests for Black Mirror over the years, and
Have we?
yeah, and we've seen it up to, I think I watched season 4 or 5 was my last one. The last season I watched was only 3 episodes. The Anthony Mackie episode, the Miley Cyrus episode, and the Eric from That 70s Show episode.
And then Bandersnatch.
And then Bandersnatch, yeah. So I think that was like 2017-ish, 2018 was the last time I watched it.
Yeah, apparently season 6 is out. Haven't watched
I
it.
think it was like a year ago it came out.
It's
yeah.
been out for a while, yeah. Apparently, Jesse from Aaron, what's his name?
Aaron Paul?
Aaron Paul is in it in an episode, but I have just no interest.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But no, Black Mirror, in my opinion, seasons 1 to 4, most of the episodes are just peak television. I love the show to death. I have a special place in my heart for many of the episodes. I remember the first episode I ever, really quick, just a quick recap on the show. First episode I ever watched was Playtest with Kurt Russell's kid. And I just fell in love with the show, heavy Twilight Zone vibes, and I've watched many episodes after that, and just so many just like where I have to sit down and rethink my entire life type episodes and just feel depressed. You can talk about, do you have a history with...
Yeah, it's interesting that you kind of jumped in with some, I mean, they're all random episodes because it's an anthology, but
Yeah.
kind of just like a random, middle of the season of the newer ones. That's interesting. I watched it when it was just the first 2 seasons that were made for British TV, and the first episode being the one with the Prime Minister. We're not going to go into spoilers, but that episode, I watched it, and right off the bat, I was like, what is this? I'm like, this is the new Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
They try to reboot Twilight Zone. They try to do these things. Like, no, this is it. And then I binged the 2 seasons that are available, and those 2 ended with the Christmas episode that we're going to talk about today, White Christmas. So when Netflix bought the rights and made the new season, season 3, which started with the Bryce Dallas Howard episode and went from there, I think season 3 and 4 are good. They're still mostly pretty good, the American ones. But those first 2 seasons ending with White Christmas, they just have like, they're made with a different vibe. Like it's a darker kind of vibe to it that I really, really enjoy.
Yes. I think Star Trek, TNG, TOS are some of the best TV shows ever made, but Black Mirror, White Christmas might be my favorite episode of television of all time, ever. Like, I rewatched it 2 nights ago. I was like giddy with excitement. Like, I was sitting there in my bed, just, just like, I love this episode. It's an hour and like 13 minutes, and to be honest, it could have been a feature film. They could have made this a feature film. They could have added 20 more minutes of a little bit more story in some areas, and this could have been a feature film, and it would have been, I think it could have been very successful. And in fact, John Hamm was the first American to be in Black Mirror, and I saw an interview, he like reached out to his agent and like, hey, you got to get me on this show.
Wow.
And that's John Hamm saying that, the man, the guy. And what an episode they chose. This episode is an hour and 13 minutes of just pure hell, pure panic, pure just like, funny story, Christmas one year, I was spending it with my mom, my sister, my brother, and oh, Charlie Brown's Christmas, oh, the Christmas Story, and I'm like, I got something we can watch. I put on White Christmas, and afterwards my mom was like, what the hell was that? It's like I think I ruined all their days.
They watched the whole thing though.
Oh yeah, we watched the entire thing.
Nice,
And I'm
nice.
sitting there just,
Yeah, yeah.
and there's like, like in horror. I'm like, wasn't that great? They're like, Al, what the hell was that? I'm like, that was one of the best episodes of TV ever.
Yeah, I think that this has, all of the things that make horror anthology great or sci-fi anthology. It has twists, it has cool ideas and futuristic ideas, it has great one-off performances and writing, and it's all encapsulated here. Black Mirror does eventually have some longer, like 90-minute episodes, and none of them are as strong as this one. And I agree with you that I actually remembered this as being 90 minutes. So when I went back to rewatch this, to talk about it, I was like, oh, it's only an hour 13. They pack a lot in here because I remembered everything that's in here. And watching it, I'm like, what an impressive pace. I mean, it is just go, 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 but not in like a rushed way where it's packed. Everything has time. Everything is fleshed out, but it's just like the pacing does not hold your hand. It does not stop, and the whole thing is just entertaining, but in the most miserable way. And yeah, you're right. Like if you're someone who doesn't want to watch something incredibly depressing, maybe don't pop this in. But if you're in for a story that is going to make you feel emotions that is very hard for TV, in my opinion, to make you feel, not just sad or not just like you tear up, but like genuine grief and misery for people that you don't know and don't exist.
Like, I feel sick for these characters. I feel sick for the future if this is ever a possibility. Like this, it's a nightmare. And it does such a good job with its pacing and the way it's executed, where it just starts off with these two people in this room, like in this like winter wasteland, and they're just working on this job. And you start to wonder, like, okay, what's the job? What's this? And it goes away from that, and they just go into their backstories, and you start asking the questions again around the same time one of the main characters does. It's like, wait, what is this place? What's the job we do here? And it brings you like, oh yeah, why are they? And then when you start putting all the pieces together, you're like, oh my god, no spoilers yet.
Yeah, we'll start off. Yeah.
Yeah, no spoilers yet, but it does such a good job of like misdirecting you and like taking you through these stories when you start putting the pieces together at the same time one of the main through lines does, and you're like, oh my god.
The story being crafted, especially for the first half or so, around John Hamm's narration, is really good because it's able to keep that pace going. And John Hamm is just such like a naturally charismatic guy that like he fits this character perfectly that he plays. I'm so glad that he reached out to me on the show because he's the perfect one for this.
I don't know if anyone else could like. I'm sure someone can, but he was the perfect choice for that role.
Yeah, and I wonder how much of it they'd already written, like if they wrote it or rewrote it around him because it fits him so naturally that it's like, oh, this is John Hamm, and everything that he's been in, basically.
Yeah, it's funny because at some point he was like, I want you to guess what I do for work. And Rafe Spall, I think that's how you say his name, who plays Joe, he's like, marketing person, and Mad Men, marketing person. So I think there's a couple little nods like that.
Nice, nice.
So
I do really love USS Callister. Watched it before ever watching Star Trek. So if we were ever going to watch something on the channel Black Mirror, it would be USS Callister, just to rewatch it now that we've seen Star Trek.
Yeah.
And that's what introduced me to Jesse Plemons as well. So, rewatching that would be fun. But White Christmas, you said it was timeless. I think one of the great things about that and why it works so well in that way is actually the set design. I mean, you look at this house that they're in, most of the stuff, if you take out the futuristic elements, this could take place when it was made in the 2010s. It could take place in the 70s. It could take place in the 90s. But then they have these futuristic elements where it's clearly not, where it's like it's either an alternate universe or a future universe where you're like, okay, it just like throws you in. And the first futuristic element, the block feature, where I'll leave it for now, isn't even introduced until like pretty far into the episode. The whole story up front that John Hamm tells about his background and what he was doing, online, like that could happen today. That's like something you could do today. And so watching, you're like, oh, okay. I'm not really thinking of this from like a futuristic Black Mirror type thing because they're not all like future sci-fi weird whatever. So then when he brings up that block feature, it's like, oh yeah. What is this? And it's like, then you immediately just start thinking, your mind leaves, like you said, all those questions you had about what was going on, because now you're just instantly thinking about this block feature and how it would work and like all those types of things. And it's like very fascinating that they just move on. Like they're just like, he was blocked, move on, you know. And it's like, oh,
Yeah, so, oh yeah, we've been here for 5 years. We do this shitty job, but it's Christmas. We're off today. So, do you want to talk? No. It's like, oh, come on. Well, here, I'll talk about me. Like, okay.
one thing I really liked about the story structure and why I think it works so well at its length is so many times watching a movie, and even sometimes with TV, but with anthology, it's kind of like mini movies, especially with something like Black Mirror where they're not 20 minutes. You know, you're waiting for like, what's that hook or what's that like, okay, we're in the story now. And for me, I felt like it was that first twist of John Hamm's background story, which we'll get into. But the great thing about White Christmas is that like it doesn't just leave it there. It's like from that moment, it's just like story hook, story hook, story hook, where it just like introduces things so fast and explains them so well that you're just like, by the time we get to the egg story, it's like oh shit, I forgot about everything I had with John Hamm. So then when it like when things start to wrap around and connect, you're like, oh yeah, wait a minute, and it's just like it's not like a mystery, but it's just like the way the story is told that like from the outset after you watch it, you realize like, oh, this whole thing was one story. This wasn't like a Twilight Zone the movie or like something where it's a bunch of stories just put together, which Black Mirror also tries later on and I think does not work as well. The American version tries it. It had been a few years and revisiting, I'm like, this is like just as good.
Oh yeah, just perfectly paced and executed where like while you're figuring it out, like the details are coming, and while you're figuring it out, more details are coming out. And like it's one of those like out of body like you know, as it's all coming together, it's like, oh my, what? And then, you know, cherry on top, it whole thing is just a nightmare.
And then on top of that, not only are these like really cool things, but then like we said earlier, a lot of these story hooks are like make you sick. Like not sick like throwing up, but like you feel for this person. Both John Hamm, even though John Hamm's the sleazier of the two clearly, but like both John Hamm and Joe, right? Is that his name?
Yeah, Joe. Yeah.
Joe is like, you're like, oh, just like every reveal, you're like, oh.
Yeah, like both characters aren't good people.
Yeah.
Like they're both
John
bad.
Hamm's clearly worse.
John Hamm's worse, but they're both bad in things that they've done. Some worse than others, but even then, both with both endings to their characters, you're just like, the first time I saw Gone Girl in theaters, where it's one of those where I remember sitting there in the theater, I put my head in my hands, like, oh my god. Same thing with this. Like after it ended, I'm like, I needed to like rethink my whole life.
Yeah.
It's similar to I don't know, the ending of Half a Life and other things, 500 Days of Summer, where it just sits with you. Where it's all fake, right? It's all bullshit. Someone just
Yeah.
some British guy who I think wrote a lot of the earlier season 1, season 2 episodes, just off the cuff, and just like, why you gotta mess with my life like that?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's pretty good probably for the non-spoiler. Do you want to give a disclaimer and go into the spoilers?
Yeah, let's go into spoilers.
Okay. So obviously,
Spoilers.
Obviously, we both recommend this. We both love it. You say it's your favorite possibly thing on TV, and we're going to jump into it. So go watch it if you haven't. It's on Netflix.
It's on YouTube. The episode is free.
It's on YouTube?
Yeah, the episode is free on YouTube.
There you go. So check it out. We're going to jump into kind of the meat and potatoes here of it. And I guess you just want to go through it from start to finish?
Start to finish.
Yeah.
Shows Joe sitting on the bed. His eyes are open. He's laying on the bed. His eyes are open. You also see the snow globe sitting on the desk. It's like, oh. And then he checks in the mirror. He's got the picture of his girlfriend on there. And then, and then we are introduced to John Hamm. They're doing some job. Don't know what the job is. But basically, it's kind of like the job for, like, you got nothing left. Like, it's one of those, you're probably a criminal. You've probably messed up something in your life, so you work at this shitty job. Presumably somewhere up north or super South Pole, North Pole, just somewhere super cold. And Joe doesn't talk. It's been 5 years since, like, oh, you said 3 sentences to me? I'm exaggerating, but you don't talk. And the whole idea is just trying to make this Joe guy talk. So John Hamm being a talker, which is, I want to bring this up too. It's so funny because he's like, my ears need water. I need conversation, please. And we know what happens to him at the end. It's like, shit, that sucks. But just great, simple little establishment, and just how fast it goes. Like, oh, guess what I do?
All right, which one of these is good?
Like I said, white shirt with a black tie.
with a slim-cut gray jacket. Classic, timeless, smart.
First of all, it's probably the most like comedic phase of the episode. Like it's a funny thing to think about before we know the full extent of what's happening, where you think it's just Jon Hamm, he's helping this nerdy guy at a party, at an office party he doesn't even work at, and he's helping him, talk to these people, try to pick up a girl. All that, it's just a fun vibe, it's a fun, like, yeah, this is sleazy, whatever. And then when it's revealed that he's actually has this whole group of people, it's not just Jon Hamm.
Yeah.
Then it's like, okay, that's another fun layer. Like, was he charging these people as well? Because they complain about wanting refunds later on. So it's like, he's really like this hustler, And then, like, you're having fun, and then the twist with the girl, where you realize what's actually going on. And that's what on this watch, what I picked up the most is all the things she talks about where she's like,
Can't think through all the babble. I only got through it last year because I was on drugs.
and it's like, at first you're like, oh, she's talking about, speed, acid, like whatever it is. It's like, no, she was taking medication.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's like, you should have known right then. And she's like, I'm not on that stuff anymore. So then when that comes back, you're like, oh my God. And and I'm sure you'll jump into more details than me, but like just the switch and just like the urgency when Jon Hamm realizes what's going on and he's like, get out of there now.
I saw you talking to them.
No, they're real people. These are real people.
No such thing as real people.
Harry, get out of there now.
And the guy's like, oh, like fumbling, and he's like, just get out. And then when he gets killed, and Jon Hamm just immediately says to all the other people, just like, destroy everything.
Wipe everything.
Yeah,
now.
just turns it off. Like, in a lot of TV shows, or in episodes or movies, right there would be it. Right? Like, that would be the story hook of, oh shit, what happens now? That barely gets addressed until way later on. Like, that's like, okay, now on to the next thing, you know?
Oh, we got two more stories here.
Yeah.
One thing I picked up on this rewatch is I thought that Jon Hamm let Joe know, like, oh, I wasn't the only one. I misread the subtitle. It's like he said he didn't reveal, like, oh, I was the only one watching.
Yes, and that's what I love about the narration in this is it's not showing us what the characters are saying to each other in that room. It's showing what actually happened, and that's so different. That's so unique because like it gets rid of the unreliable narrator, kind of side of it, where we're actually seeing what's happening, so we get to see in real time, because Joe does it later on too, where he lies about something and then it shows the reality. And
my favorite example is, well, after the woman kills him, and Joe's like, how did he hear about this? And Jon Hamm goes, I think I saw it on the newscast. Hard cut to him just watching the guy die. Wipe everything now.
yeah. But then we also learn later on it's because he's still kind of lying to these people.
He doesn't. He doesn't want to reveal
the whole
thing. I mean, the
thing.
whole thing's a deal, right? It's like, okay, we'll give you a less harsh sentence if you get confession out of this guy. But yeah. Apparently, like all the stuff like Jon Hamm was saying are legit pickup artist tactics. I mean, I wouldn't know, but apparently they are. What else? But yeah, back to I forget, Jennifer was, I think, the woman from Game of Thrones. Like, yeah, like you said, like everything she's saying taken out of context. Like, oh, I was on drugs before. It's like, oh, that's horrible. I'm glad you're off them. Like, yeah, I don't need that shit. But man, it's like when you go back and rewatch it, everything she's like knowing in hindsight what happens, it's like, bro, the clues were obvious. That she's insane.
And that's why she's the outsider. That's why she doesn't care that the guy's ignoring her and all these things that typically work, for Jon Hamm. And I love how the what's like the nerd guy? I don't know his name. Harry was that Harry, like his whole speech about changing states and how he's like, oh, it's like jumping in a pool.
And you're worried that the water's going to be cold, but moments after you jump in that it'll be fine. It's the fear of the shock that holds you back.
Like the jumping in the pool can't hurt you. It's just changing states, but that's what you're afraid of. And I'm like, that's actually really true to like a lot of things, right? Like when we're scared to do something, we're not scared of like the afterwards. We're scared of the actual thing. And it's like low-key good advice.
He was doing so well on his own. He just needed the confidence to do it. And it's like he finally gets the confidence, and he had help from Jon Hamm, and like he finally does it with this, and he gets murdered. Like presumably the first time he's kissed a girl ever, and it's like he gets murdered, because there's a lot of times where like he was likable on his own. The funniest part is when she pulls out a funnel. She just has a funnel.
Please, I don't want it. You do.
I knew you wouldn't want to drink this. Here you go. It's just a nightmare.
His wife catches him, and that's when he brings in the block scenario, and I think that is terrifying. There are some logistics to it, especially we'll get to later with John Hamm, where it's like, okay, how would this actually work if it was a real thing? But the idea of more of the individual block.
You ever been blocked?
I've had enough, Matthew. It's done. Not this time.
That's all we get introduced to here so far on the John Hamm side when he brings it up. And immediately I'm like, oh, that would suck. That would obviously suck because there's no like bullshitting or like convincing the person, right? It's like you're done. Like there's nothing. It's just like blocking someone on social media. It's like they're done. It's like
that's it.
It's like unless they have contact with you another way, it's like they can't convince you to unblock them. Like it's up to you. And for that to be in real life and the way it's portrayed too, it's like I want to say it's realistic. Like I want to give it credit. Like if this technology existed, what would it look like? Like the person wouldn't just disappear. Like they would have to be a mass. So I really liked it. What'd you think of that whole concept?
It's terrifying. Like, oh, something like that would never exist. But it's like one of those, I think of it like in the Jurassic Park Jeff Goldblum line, like you didn't even think if you should do it, you just did it because you could. And in this universe, they just created this technology. Oh, we can, why not? And John Hamm mentions, oh, we all got Z eyes put in. You can't even take them out. So it makes me wonder, like, were these implants put in, like these contacts put in when they were children? Do adults willingly sign up for this? It's very similar to the implants in the season 1, episode 3 episode. Mm-hmm. I forget what it's called, but the one where you rewind and watch everything you've ever seen is recorded, which is another terrifying type thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't explain it. Like you can kind of just guess on your own, like, oh, maybe it's something they sign up for, maybe it is at birth, you don't know. But I love just that idea. There's actually a Twilight Zone episode, I believe, an 80s Twilight Zone episode. I never watched it, but I saw it on TV once where similar premise, but instead of it being like that exact thing, it was about a guy who like commits a crime and then he gets shunned. Or it's basically the same thing.
Oh, I know what episode
yeah,
you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's kind of not yet at this point of the story, but it gets to that level. But yeah, I found it terrifying. And then he's like, yeah, she blocked me, and then she basically leaves him, right? And then how do they get to the? Like, he says that's not even my job.
It's like, oh, that was a hobby, but my actual job was different. And then that's like, oh, what did you do? Guess what I did for work? And then the real nightmare comes. I mean, that was a nightmare too. And it's like, oh, you thought that was a nightmare? Well, check this out. And I think it's very a conversation that needs to be had with AIs now. And if they can develop an AI that thinks it's a real person. So basically, it cuts to this woman is getting some sort of surgical thing done. And we're hearing her inner monologue.
That toast looks burnt. Should I say something? Yeah, I think I'll say something.
Well, good.
I'll make some more. And it shows a lady walk out.
Pissed, yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe there's some implant, but I feel like, I mean, make it a horror episode. It's more impactful if the thing thinks it's a real person. But you think they put in some thing where it's like, it knows it's a cookie, or where it doesn't think it's a real person, because the whole training of it is just a nightmare.
My job is to explain what's happening to you as best I can.
Oh my God, am I dead?
No.
I go back and forth on it because on one aspect, yes, obviously for the dramatic aspect of it, the story would need to exist to where it happens the way it does. Like, logistically, why wouldn't they, instead of having this John Hamm character that has this job, why wouldn't they just have the thing know what it is? You can kind of excuse it away of like, oh, well, maybe it doesn't work as well if they do that. Or maybe, but when I was first watching it, or even rewatching it today, I'd forgotten, like, I thought the inner monologue we're hearing is actually her. And then when they take it out, it's just like that version, that copy of her, but it's actually the egg the whole time, or like because I forgot they actually put something in and it shadows you for a week.
Yep.
And that's when it basically, by the time it's coming out, it doesn't even realize it's shadowing you. It thinks it's you. So when they take it out, it thinks it's you. But even with that being said, in that week leading up to it, she would know what the surgery is she's going to do. So even I was a little caught off guard of like, why is it so clueless? It's for dramatic purposes, basically.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, there's some setting, because very similar to Joe, like, he didn't know he was a cookie either.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, he starts to, like, put it together towards the end. Like, wait, what's going on here? But there's some little tweak where they can like not have it. But for the terms of telling a terrifying story, it's more impactful if it thinks it's a real person.
I'm not doing this. I'm not some sort of push-button toaster monkey.
Would you prefer to do nothing?
Well, I'm not doing this.
3 weeks in solitary with nothing, just surrounded by white. Can't even sleep. Can't sleep.
I mean, maybe I'm mentally weak. I don't know. But when he does the 3 weeks, and then she comes back and he's like, "All right, well, you ready to work?" She's like, "I'm not doing that." I'm like, "Dude, I would have given in after a day."
I would have folded. Yeah, I would have folded. So I'll do whatever. And then 6 months, where if you don't know or haven't seen, he can set up the time where 6 months in the real world passes in a minute, but to them, the 6 months is 6 months
Real time, yeah.
with no sleep, nothing to do, nothing. And
She's just in a white blank room.
See, the trick of it lay in breaking them without letting them snap completely.
Give me something to do.
key is not let them snap, because if they snap, they're worthless, and we'll sell them to the game industry for cheap cannon fodder for a war game or something. It's like, fuck.
It's like they'd be screwed either way.
Yeah, and Joe's like, that's barbaric. That's slavery. And John Hamm's, oh, it's not real. It's whatever. Now I feel bad, playing Red Dead 2 or other games with NPCs and, killing them or whatever. It's like, I kind of feel bad after watching this. So like, what if it's not, obviously it's not a super advanced AI. It's just a computer simulator, just code. But I don't know, maybe USS Callister too, also explored with that, with AIs being beings, and it's just terrifying, just horrible. But
They revisit this theme a lot. I think this is the first time it's introduced, but they revisit this a lot. USS Callister, the episode you brought up, Black Museum, also has the teddy bear one where they put the consciousness of his dead spouse and the teddy bear. So like they revisit it a lot because it is such a creepy, thing to think about. And with technology, like it's getting more and more possible. We're not there yet, but I personally think, probably just biased, but like I think that USS Callister is like the perfected version of like how scary it could be and like how realistic it is for how someone would use it for their own personal use. But we won't talk about that now. But here, she's using it for herself. The lady is getting this for herself. So I just find it ironic that it's like she's getting it for herself. Little does she know this thing is like going crazy.
I'm sure when they sold it to her, we're like selling the idea. It knows everything you love, and it'll do everything for you. Not realizing it's literally you in this computer terminal enslaved.
Because she doesn't even talk to it,
No.
Only John Hamm can hear her, and talk to her. So I'm thinking it's not like an Alexa situation where you talk to it. It's just literally, she doesn't even know it's her. Like, she doesn't even know, she knows it shattered her or whatever, but she doesn't know it's a sentient thing.
Oh, yeah. No, and it's like that scene where she's just, putting the appointments or making the toast, and she's just sitting there, like, the expression on her face is, like, so great. It's like this is my existence. It's
She's
like,
a machine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I'm gonna do this forever. And like after the real life character, like what happens to her then?
Yeah, there's no death. I guess they could turn it off, but there's no death.
Yeah, but when the real one dies, like what happens to?
Yeah, she just, unless they turn it off or the egg dies, like the battery or something. They never explore that here, but it is kind of like, well, we'll see what they want to do with you now.
Yeah, my favorite part is John Hamm eats the toast and he just puts it on the counter. I was watching it. He doesn't put it on the plate. He just puts it back on the counter. Yeah. I'm like, what a piece of shit. And then he does the horse story 10 times worse than Harry does it. I'm like, oh, this sounds terrible.
Yeah. I did like the connection where when the lady was in the hospital bed and she's like, oh, this toast is a little overdone. And then he's like, how do you like your toast? And she's like, slightly underdone.
Yes. A great way to like tell the story. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just a bullshit, like, oh, I don't like my toast. It's like, oh, yeah. How do we make it effective?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I don't know what to do. You already know you're making toast. The buttons are symbolic anyway, just very similar to USS Callister with the mother from, spoiler, for how much, what button do I press? And like, the woman's like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You just press a button.
Yeah. So then when that story ends, the egg story, and it goes into Joe's story, and he starts finally talking, at first in that moment, I'm thinking like, well, that was neat, but like, what's the addition? Like what's the reason? Like it's just a little story they threw in. But no, it wraps around eventually. So then we get to Joe's side, which I think is the most just traumatic.
Yeah.
Because Joe, I mean, we're in the spoilers, so he kills the old man and causes the little girl to die. So, like, you could argue his actions are worse than what John Hamm did. But from what we see of them as people before that, like, he's the much more seems like normal guy, so where John Hamm is just a clear asshole, you know? So it makes you feel genuinely bad for Joe when these things are happening with his wife or girlfriend or whatever. But I do love just at the beginning when he's like, oh, we were perfect for each other. And then he's just like a drunk asshole in all the clips.
Yeah. Before that, John Hamm does some classic interrogation tips, because that's the whole thing, right? This whole thing is an interrogation to make him confess. And John Hamm does some very classic, like, oh, when he tells the story about the AI, and Joe's like, that's slavery, that's barbaric. And John Hamm's like, oh, you're empathetic. You're a good person, you know, telling those things, reaffirming to make him talk, make him feel comfortable. It's like, oh, you're a good person, Joe. And then Joe's like, I'm not a good man. It's like, oh, what happened? Something happened with your family, your girlfriend, and then Joe's been eyeing the bottle the entire time. He's like, fuck it. And it's like, well, and in his mind, he's been there for 5 years, his life's already over. Might as well talk. And he does. So he has his girlfriend. Things are going great. They go to a karaoke bar. He sings that song, and he's like a bit drunk and a bit ridiculous. And then the girlfriend sings a song from 50 Million Merits, which shows up in Black Mirror all the time. It's like one of those like Easter egg type things that always shows up. Depressing song.
Try to shame me, and still I'll care.
They're having dinner, drinking wine. And
With the other couple.
With the other couple, yeah, the Asian guy and
and his girlfriend.
yeah.
Who she introduced them
Yeah.
through their work or college or whatever.
And there's such like good little teasers where it's like, oh, I remember me and Beth, which is Joe's girlfriend. Like, oh, we were on a work trip years ago, and they were complaining how much I snore. A little bit, like a little tease, like, oh, you snore because you're sleeping together.
Yep.
And then mentions that Beth introduced the Asian guy's girlfriend to the Asian guy. Probably, like, oh, I'm done with this, but they're still sleeping together. And then when Joe's cleaning up dinner, Joe's like, oh, I think she's more into him than he's into her. It's like, yeah, because he's into your girlfriend. And then she's all depressed, and then, like, the whole thing could have been avoided if the girlfriend just threw out the trash and didn't leave the pregnancy test out in like the trash can. Maybe if she like wrapped it up and put it in like the actual dumpster, because he finds the pregnancy test, very similar to the one from Be Right Back with Haley Atwell, with the the dancing baby animation. Like, nice little callback there to that episode.
I mean, it's our baby.
I know, and it's not easy for me.
Well, let's at least discuss this.
No, I've made up my mind.
Well, I haven't.
Knowing what happens, it's like it's one of those, I don't know, watching your favorite character make a mistake. It's like, don't do it.
Yeah.
It's like, or watching Revenge of the Sith. It's like, don't turn to the dark side, Anakin. Don't do it. Oh, I did it. He did it again. You're hoping for a different.
Yeah,
he did it again.
Yeah, probably my favorite moment of the whole episode is when this is happening, and she, is like, "You're not listening," and she's like, "I don't want it," and then like there's like that moment of silence, and then he just goes,
You're being a bitch.
Stop it.
You're being a cold bitch.
Cold bitch who would kill a kid, and you're like, oh no.
But it's just so great because the whole time he's like acting so like happy about it, like, oh yeah, and then he's just like, you're being a bitch. It's like, oh.
Yeah, and like one of the last things he says to her before she blocks him is like, "Who rip a baby out from your womb because it doesn't fit your plan?" It's like, "Oh, stop or I'll block you. Don't you fucking dare!" And like she blocks him. It's like, and that's like, in her headcanon, like that's the last thing that she said to him. It's like, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
But I will just say this though. So this is where we get the introduction of some additional features of the block. One being that all of the pictures of them, I'm guessing that the block works by identifying the person. So like all of the pictures of them are also like that. You can't see them anywhere. It's not just the real person. So like I think about like being blocked on Twitter. Like if it was a weird scenario where like you met a celebrity and then pissed them off and they blocked you, like would they be blocked on all the movies that you watch too?
Yeah. Like, just watching Forrest Gump and you see this blob and you're just like,
yeah, what if you were unaware, like did he fucking block me?
Did Tom Hanks block me?
Yeah.
Or wouldn't that be crazy? Just like walking down the street or just in public and you see that silhouette, like, who blocked me?
Yeah.
Who blocked me? Who are you?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like the only times we see it in these first two scenarios are like someone close to them, you know, and it's sort of like, what if it is just like you annoy a stranger in public or like your baby's crying or something and it's like they just block you, because then you would see that they blocked you. It's an interesting thing to think about. There's a lot of things to think about with this, but that's where it starts to get like, oh, you can't even see pictures of her or anything, and like, you know, when he confronts her in public because she's still pregnant, she kept the baby, and he just comes up and he's like, and I'm just like,
Turtle off.
yeah, and he's like, turn it off now. And I'm just like, you know, listen, what he did to her in the bedroom, like, that's terrible, and like, I'm sure he treated her terribly. That, you know, we saw the clips, but it's like, what she does to him here is just like the most diabolical thing I've ever seen.
It's one of the most heinous crimes of all time, especially when it gets there, and the story that he tells leading up to it. Because I've been in that situation where, I don't know, post breakup and like seeing something is better than nothing, and you know, see their social media and you go, oh, you know, I've been in that situation in the past. And then so basically after that confrontation in person, she gets a legal blocking on him. And legal blockings cover offspring, and John Hamm throws a little nugget of, you know, backstory for him. Oh, legal block, yeah, I've been there. Harsh, because he mentions he has a daughter. So during his divorce separation, they got a legal blocking as well. So he can't see his kid either. I don't know if that's still going on before the ending, what happens to him. Yeah, Joe is just like so upset about it because he never got a resolution, a conclusion. So like, I don't condone this at all, but it's like, well, there is one thing I do know. I know that she goes up to her dad's every year for Christmas, so I'll drive up there early, hide in the fucking woods, and like sing Something Is Better Than Nothing, and just like, for like 4 or 5 years, just like watch, once a year, just watching this kid grow up. And
Blocked.
Like, blocked, because you can't see the kid. The kid is blocked because legal blockings cover kids and can't even tell if it's a boy or a girl. And then later on, somehow through the silhouette, he's able to tell it's a girl. And yeah, just horrible. And then one day he's just watching TV. And then 15 Million Merits, the show, you know, like the tryout show, like that's on the TV. So another little callback to that episode. Like, oh, hey, look at that. And then it cuts to a news station. Oh, the tragic train accident where this 18-year-old student died. And also this woman right here. And then it's her. And he's like, she died in a train accident.
Yeah, and that's what makes part of the reason that makes the story so crazy. Is like so many just random things. Like if that didn't happen, then what happens in the story, you know? And so she dies, and that gets rid of the block, which also gets rid of the block for the kid.
Which means he can finally see the kid. Yeah.
Which means but when I found that out, which I mean it would make sense, I guess. But like when I found that out that gets rid of the block, I instantly thought like, oh, well, people are getting killed all the time then. Like, you know, if like John Hamm's scenario, for example, if he had a kid with that woman and then she blocked him and you could see the kid, like, he's just going to kill her. Like, you know, I was instantly like, oh, he could, like, this Joe guy could have just killed her at any time and then seen the kid. And like, yeah, not everyone, I guess, has in their brain to just be able to, yeah, like it's to be able to kill people. But do you know what I mean? Like if this was on a worldwide scale, like I'd be like, oh, there'd be so many fucking murders. And it's like, I'm just like, oh man, like I'm just like thinking about that. Like so many things with this block, and think I'm like, oh man, it would be such a different world. And like how one invention could just like change the world dramatically.
Yeah, change the dynamics of how the world works.
And it's like, you know how when someone gets killed now, the spouse is always the first suspect, like, oh, it's always the husband or whatever.
Yeah.
It'd be ramped up so much if they knew you were blocked, you're cooked. Like if you're blocked by a spouse and your spouse gets killed, you're going to jail. It doesn't matter if you did it.
Yeah. Especially in this world specifically with the eyes, I'm pretty sure it's all recorded anyway. I mean, I don't think
Well, the recording, I guess, would save you then if you didn't kill them, but...
True, very true. I mean, you can delete recordings, but that'd be... Oh, why did you delete a recording on the same day, same hour she was murdered? I don't know.
Are you able to delete the recordings in that other episode?
Yeah.
Wow, so she kept the recordings of fucking that guy. That's crazy. In that other episode?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, well, we got into that. But anyway...
All right, we'll save that episode for another day. So basically, I can go see my daughter now. And just like gets her a little present, a little snow globe, driving up there, kids playing in the snow, has her hood on, facing away from the driveway. He's walking up. Hello, darling. I remember that moment being already in this episode, 10 times alone, where I'm like,
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they add that into it. It's like, you never had a daughter. It's like, ugh.
This whole time.
This whole time.
And you do have to kind of buy in because he's like, so I'd go up there every year, you know, and it's probably been at least 3-4 years, you know.
4 or 5 years,
And I'm
yeah.
thinking to myself, like, this guy had no character development. Like, I'm thinking, like, throughout these years, it's like, what was the rest of your year like? Like, I'm trying to think, you know. It's like, I know that I'm sure there are people like that wouldn't get over it, you know, if they think it's their kid, you know. But I'm just imagining, like, in today's world, but if we had this technology, I'm imagining this guy making a TikTok. My wife blocked me from my kid, you know, like trying to become viral, and then like trying to get it overturned. Like, I'm just thinking all these weird scenarios.
I wonder if they thought about that, and that's why they made Nosedive the next season, where it's like, wait a second, social media is so crazy right now. Let's do a horrible social media episode.
Yeah.
So I wonder if they thought about that post this and like, oh yeah, let's do that.
But yeah, when that got revealed the first time watching, I'm like, when she first blocks him and does all this, she doesn't just like block him, she leaves her life entirely. So then he writes those letters to her dad, and we never hear anything about that. So then when he goes there and he's like, this is about those letters, I threw those away. I'm like, oh.
He's like, I threw those out before she could see him. It's like, ugh.
And it's like, I don't think the dad even knew that, like, you know, she never told him, and like he probably didn't know anything about the daughter, like the intimate details of the daughter's life. You know, he's just a supportive dad. So it's like he didn't know that these letters, he probably didn't even read them. So it's like he didn't know that these letters were like thinking that he thought it was his daughter. That's why he's so confused when he's like, I want to see my daughter. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? You know? And it's like,
Yeah, she probably didn't tell him all the details.
she probably just said, I cheated on him with this guy, or maybe I not even said she cheated on him. Just like, I'm having a kid with this guy, I'm keeping it, I left my boyfriend. You know, it's like, it's just nuts. And then the fact that she does all that and then just dies.
Moment of weakness. And to be fair, after everything that happened to him, it's wrong, but I can't blame him.
I want to see my daughter. You have no daughter here!
I mean, there's a reason why crimes of passion are punished differently than a premeditated murder. Like, you know, it's taken into account legally. That doesn't mean it's right, but it's like it's a thing.
Yeah, after 5 years of being blocked by the love of your life, thinking you have a child, only to find out that the love of your life cheated on you, is now dead, and the daughter you thought you never had, and you've just been wasting your time. And you have this fucking angry guy yelling in your ear, who's always been a dick to you. And then it snaps. He's like, I gotta get out of here. Not even thinking of the girl. It's like, I'm just gonna drive, and once I'm done driving, I'm gonna go into a town and drink and just sleep on the streets because I don't know what to do. And a very real thing of like, I was picked up by the police, but I didn't talk. I couldn't talk because if I talked, it'd be real. And I've been in those situations before where something crazy or horrible happens, and you're just like, if I talk about it, it's real. If I breathe life into it, it's real. And that state of denial. I've been in similar situations.
And, you know, the thing with the kid, obviously it being Asian gives it away. But we don't really need the technology. Like, this happens to people now, to guys now. And I'm not, you know, I'm not MRA, men's rights activist here or anything. But I'm just saying, like, you know, a guy can think that a kid's his and raise it as their kid and then find out that, you know, their spouse or partner, whoever, cheated on them and it wasn't their kid. And even situations where the woman knew it and never told them, you know, and then they find out eventually. And it's like, that's basically what this guy went through, you know, but they just, obviously the story's a little bit different, but, you know, that part of it does happen. And it's like, that sucks, you know, I cannot imagine. And so it makes sense in that moment. Now, of course, like you were talking about watching it, trying to like, oh, do something else, like rewatching it. It's like, don't go in the house, dude. It's like, just leave, take your L.
And then this is where we kind of jump back to the cabin, and this is where like everything starts to come together. Like, what's happening? And like John Hamm, his demeanor kind of changes, where he's really like, so what happened next? No, stay with me. What happens? And he's like, Joe's like, what is this place? What job do we do? And like John Hamm's like, no, stay with me. What happened? And he's able to pull it out of him, and it's like, what happened to the girl? It's like, well, she stayed there, and then when she realized, my heart breaks just like rewatching it earlier, and then even thinking about it, it's like, she just stayed there. And when she realized no one was coming for help, she gave her granddad a present and went outside to get help.
How far did she get?
It's like, just confess, Joe. And he confesses, and then like John Hamm's like, woo, boom.
Yeah, talk about a sociopath, like the flip of it's just like, told you I'd get it. It's like, does not care about this guy at all.
Yeah, he's like, sorry, Joe. And then camera changes and he's gone, and we're like, what? And then he's like a VR headset takes it off.
It was interesting, even on a first-time watch, when we come back to the cabin there, like, John Hamm basically, he drops off Assad, and it's like, oh, he's clearly interrogating this guy to get, like, even on a first-time watch, you can kind of pick up, like, oh, he's trying to get him to confess to this. But the shock is that it's not him. It's a cookie of him. And like, that twist of it makes it make perfect sense, where it's like, oh, of course John Hamm doesn't give a shit about him. It's a cookie. He didn't care about any of those other people he tortured, you know, and, or people. But
Yeah.
they're code. Like he even said, he's like, it's code. It's not real.
Yeah. My favorite is when the woman goes up to real life.
Congratulations on your confession.
That cookie we took out of your head just gave us the full story.
So his cookie had 5 years of development and growth, whereas actual Joe's just been sitting there. Like, all this was probably pretty recent. He's probably just...
Oh, yeah, he just got picked up by the
Oh, yeah,
police.
he's been there for... They said they interrogated him for 2 days and got nothing.
Yeah.
Like, this is all, like, real fast.
Probably the most terrifying thing of the whole... Well, first of all, let's wrap up John Hamm. So this is a deal for him. So his whole crime that we heard about also just recently happened, because this whole thing is a deal for him. But then we find out he didn't even tell them all those details about hiding the murder and all that. It's like, bro, why would you give that... Why would you give that up in the interrogation? I guess to get the confession from him, but it's like, come on, man. You know they're watching, and then they're like, oh, we'll let you go, but you're going to be on the registry. Basically, like a pedophile registry.
Well, that's
basically.
the thing. They knew he did something, because, like you said, that was the deal. You know, I get a lighter sentence if I do this. So they knew he did something.
But they didn't know... So, like, remember when he was like, oh, I saw it on the news? They didn't know that he witnessed the murder and then didn't say anything about it. Because they're like, you didn't report a murder. You didn't tell us that. Like, so when he said to the guy, like, I think I saw it on the news. I don't know how they figured it out, but somehow they figured it out that he witnessed this murder and didn't tell the police. Maybe they talked to his cookie.
Maybe, because they frame it like they picked up John Hamm as well. Like, he was arrested post everything that happened. So they had to know something. Because otherwise, why would he be arrested? You know what I mean? Because that's the whole thing. It's a deal. Like, John Hamm didn't come here on his own free will, and the police didn't find him. Like, oh, you work in this. Like, he was obviously already arrested.
I think his wife probably turned him in. Because remember, he's like, my wife found out I was involved and then blocked me. She probably called the police.
Yeah, probably.
And then he probably only confessed that he was part of that dating thing. But, you know, they didn't know about the rest of it. My only thing is, how did the police see what we saw on the show? That's what we didn't find out. They must have made a cookie of him and then found it out from that cookie. Cookie inception. But,
I don't know. It's not important.
What does it mean, this register?
It means you're blocked
By who?
by everyone.
this is where the logistics of the block completely fall apart. How does the dude eat? Like, how
Order
does
food,
how
go
does
grocery
he-
shopping, anything.
Yeah. There has to be special exempt people
Like,
that they don't tell us.
Like, even like the heaviest of heavy, like on parole, RSOs, murderers, like they're still able to go out and do things.
Yeah.
Like you can't survive. You can't watch TV. You can't watch movies. You can't listen to music. I mean, everything sounds muffled. It's like
You think even music?
maybe just melodies, but
But you have to listen to dead people's music. Watch movies with dead people. Watch old movies.
that's
Loophole.
that's a loophole, yeah. You can watch 12 Angry Men as many times as you want. I mean, they're all dead, right?
I don't know. Probably. But that's where, for me, the logistics are kind of like, for the story, it's like a heavy-hitting ending for the character, so you just have to accept it. But like in reality, like he'd have to live life and you know, be able to do stuff. So there would be people that could communicate with him somehow.
Or not. Maybe it's like one of those things where, they didn't think about it. It's like, oh, that's just the thing. Well, they didn't work out the kinks. It's like, maybe. And like everyone sees him in red. And there's this shot where it shows some guy holding a snow globe. And then he sees the red silhouette. He's like this. And it makes me wonder, is there a cut scene where he like throws a snow globe at him maybe? Because like, they just see like this red figure, and maybe similar to that Twilight Zone episode where everyone just like shuns and ignores him. But maybe also there's some people who are like cruel and like, oh, that guy's that guy's a real monster, you know. And they,
Yeah, I mean, it's like being a sexual offender, like on a predator list, you know, with the red dots, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It's basically like that. That's how I took it anyway. It's just like he's looking at him like, what did that guy do? You know, and
it just showed him. I mean, the snow globe is a big factor. I mean, the cookie is basically people stuck in a snow globe. So
that is an interesting touch. Yeah, I didn't pick that up.
yeah, I mean that's. And then we cut back to Joe, fake Joe, Cookie Joe, the Joe that we know, and well, the cops. You see the cop messing with the time thing. It's like, what are you doing?
Cranked him up to 1,000 years a minute. There's a proper sentence.
Which means they're probably not going to work. It's probably Christmas Eve. They're not going to work the next day, so they'll be back on the 26th. So,
And he said 1,000 years a
minute.
So it doesn't. It's like he's done.
I'd be so fascinated to see what would happen when they boop 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 turn it back on, and
I mean, the dude's probably just like laying on. I mean, we saw the woman after 6 months. 1,000 years a minute. That'd be billions of years, I think.
and he's stuck listening to that same song over and over again. And that's the best part. The credits come up and it's playing that song. I wish it could. be.
Yeah.
It's like this happy, cheery song. It's like, this is not a happy, cheery moment.
And it's like in real time he has to experience this. Can't leave the room. Can't do anything. I mean,
the song's on repeat.
Whatever is there when they come back would not be semblance, because John Hamm said they can, crack and go crazy or whatever. So it's like, if that's true, whatever was there when they come back is not going to be a person. Like, it's just going to be
I'd be
mush.
I'd be fascinated and terrified to see what would happen when they turn it back on. Yeah.
The ultimate, like, you're done.
Yeah. And his real life counterpart is also going to prison forever.
But I would rather be real life. Yeah.
I'd rather be the real life prisoner. Like those poor lines of code that have to deal with this. I mean, would the computer just crash eventually? Like,
the computer commit suicide.
I mean, it had the crash.exe or whatever.
Program is not responding. Yeah, but yeah, this is obviously you said it might be your favorite TV episode ever. So I'm guessing it's your favorite Black Mirror episode.
Yes, probably. There's a few ones that come close. I won't list them yet, just in case for future content. But yeah, it's amazing.
Definitely a lot more hits than misses in the series, even in the later seasons that I've seen. So definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it this holiday season. You can binge it on Netflix. Apparently some of it's on YouTube, including White Christmas. And
Daily Motion.
yeah, there you go.